What's up YouTube? I'm Euchre. I've been Challenger in TFT in sets 4, 4.5, 5, 5.5, and now 6. Recently, I started coaching people from Silver all the way up to Master in TFT, and I started noticing the same errors over and over again. Things that I consider the fundamentals. So in this series, I'm going to take you through those fundamentals and show you how you can elevate your gameplay in every single set, no matter the champions, no matter the traits. At its core, TFT is a game about building an army stronger than each and every one of your opponents. You have until about stage 6 or stage 7, assuming that you don't die too early, to do that. The easiest way to do that, to power up your army and defeat your opponents, the easiest way to do it is to have way more gold than everybody else in the game. You get more rolls, you get to level more, you can buy more 4 and 5 cost champions, which are ultimately the strongest champions in the game. If you have more resources than your opponents, you can defeat them. It's simple as that. Building the best economy in TFT is a bit like building a sturdy structure. Make it a house, an apartment building. You need to start with the strong foundation. It's not that similar in other ways. You don't need nails or a hammer, but you do need a strong foundation to your economy. Your foundation in TFT is going to be your stage 2 economy. If you have more money than everybody else stage 2, it's going to snowball a lot, and that's because of interest. Interest is a core game mechanic of TFT where for every 10 gold you have in your bank up to 50 gold, you will generate 1 gold of interest. If you have 10 gold at the end of a turn, you'll get 1 extra gold that turn. 20 gold, you'll get 2 extra gold. It caps out at 50 gold though. How do you build up your foundation in stage 2? There's a lot of ways to do it, and they all depend on your playstyle, what composition you want to end up playing, how strong it's going to be, when it can become strong. There's a lot of calculations that go into it. The first 2 ways are win streaking, or lose streaking while generating interest. Streaking 5 rounds in a row, either winning or losing, is ideal because after 2-6 and then after 2-7, you'll generate plus 6 gold. That's a lot of gold. 6 gold is a ton in this game. Because streaking is so crucial to building early economy, it's important to identify early whether you will attempt to win or lose streak in stage 2. First, let's talk about win streaking. Win streaking typically is possible if you have 2-star units that synergize well. And what do I mean by synergize well? You can have a strong frontline and backline that has maybe 1 or 2 synergies that fits together. If you have a 2-star frontliner and a 2-star backliner, you can maybe look to streak. That's especially the case if you have matching traits of those 2-star units that you have, and if you have slammable items that fit your board. Cover that in a future video, which items to slam and in what scenario. Why is it so important to determine whether you have 2-star units and slammable items? Well, when you can win streak and have upgraded units, it's often correct to level up on 2-1 or 2-2. Keep in mind as well, when we're talking about win streaking, it's ideal to 5 streak. But if you 4 streak into the creeps, then you're going to get plus 4 gold instead of plus 6. But plus 4 is a lot better than anybody else that's not 4 streaking, so it's still pretty good. When deciding whether you want to level at 2-1 or 2-2, consider what the unit that you're going to add will contribute to your board. Does it give you a synergy that buffs up your strongest units? If you have a Vi 2 and you're going to add Sniper to your Caitlyn, but it's a Caitlyn 1, that's not going to strengthen your board that much because your strong units don't really benefit themselves from the synergy. It will help a little bit, but ideally you'd want to add a Bruiser because it gives your Vi double the Bruiser HP. And Vi is your strongest unit in that scenario. Or say that you're starting with a Darius 2, a TF1, a Ziggs 1, and you can level up and add an Ezreal 1 for scrap. That's not going to do too much for your board because your strong unit in that scenario is the Darius. If you can level up and put Bodyguard in, that might be pretty good for you because you have a Darius 2. But in that scenario, I'm looking not to level unless I have another 2-star unit, and we'll talk about why later in the video. Thinking this way about what units are strong and what units are benefiting the strongest units currently on your board will help you determine how to find the strongest board available to you, which is good no matter what you're trying to do as far as economy. Generally, focus on adding units that buff up the strongest units that you have, whether they give synergies to those units or they give you a little bit of extra frontline when you have a strong backline unit. The units that are 2-starred or that have items are the units you want to focus on strengthening the most. Now let's talk about lose streaking, or as I'm going to call it here, lose streaking plus interest. Lose streaking itself generates less money by default than win streaking does. That's because every single round that you win, you get plus 1 gold for the win itself. And then you also get the win streak gold. That means that the win streakers are going to be generating more money than the lose streakers through the streak gold and the plus 1 for victory gold than the lose streakers. Because the lose streakers are essentially -5 compared to someone that 5 win streaks. But there's a crucial way that loose streakers are actually able to generate more money, and that's because they don't need to level. If you're loose streaking, you can generate a lot more interest because the win streakers had to spend money to purchase XP. But as a loose streaker, you don't have to purchase XP because you're trying to lose. You want to kill as many units as possible to preserve some HP, but not so many units that you win. And in order to do that, generally you want to avoid leveling. I can't emphasize this enough. What are the conditions that make you look for loose streak? If you don't have any 2 stars at 2-1, or sometimes if you do have 2 stars but they don't synergize well at all, then it often makes sense to loose streak at least the first 2 or 3 rounds until you have 2-star units that fit together on your board. When it's optimal to loss streak in these scenarios, do not level at 1-4, at 2-1, or at 2-2. Other players are generating that +1 gold each fight they win, like we talked about. But if you're losing anyway and you leveled up, you're going to lose out on a lot of potential interest you could make. By not leveling, you give yourself the option of making 10 gold at 2-1 or 2-2, depending on how much gold you started with and how many pairs you need to hold. We'll probably talk in a future video about how to identify which pairs you need to hold for your board and go through some examples of that. I just want to emphasize one more time, when your opener requires loose streaking, or if loose streaking is optimal, leveling up early will cost you stage 2 interest and debilitate your economy. It will ruin your game. I've seen games when I've been coaching where somebody leveled up at 2-2 or 2-3 to be level 5, and that literally cost them the entire game, all in stage 2, just by ruining their economy. The best they were playing for was 5th or 6th. Let me talk about another reason that not leveling is so crucial. I know I've hammered on this, but I think it's super important if you don't have 2 stars and you're not going to be able to win streak that you don't level. And the reason for that is, if you have these pairs of 1-cost units that can be strong for your board, if you stay level 3 for 2 extra turns while you're losing, you have a much higher chance of hitting 1-cost pairs that you weren't already able to 2-star. That's a natural segue into our next section, but first I want to make a special note here. If you're loose streaking in stage 2, you're going to need to identify a round by which you can level up and roll down to stabilize, so that you'll be able to level up further in the game and not bleed out all of your HP. Now, I just talked a little bit ago about how not leveling up early in stage 2 allows you to hit some 2-star units that you weren't able to hit earlier and now can make your board strong. If you do that, sometimes you can adapt from loose streak the entirety of stage 2 to loose streaking a few rounds into starting your win streak early. You might lose a little bit of money in the short term, but if you get strong, sometimes you can start your win streak early, and then say at 2-5 you start winning after losing the first 3 rounds, and then you just win the next 6. You'll be win streaky and you'll make up for that money that you lost. And you'll also preserve your HP, which is pretty important. You can't lose too much HP or you die. That's just how the game works. Oftentimes when I'm looking to pivot from loose streaking into win streaking, I'll have one or two of the rounds before the stage 2 carousel. I won't have leveled, of course, because I wouldn't have hit my pairs, and so that's why I didn't level up. But then at 2-5, once I've hit some 2 stars, then I might level twice to go to level 5, just because I won a few of those rounds, and now I can make my board strong. It's all a calculation that you'll have to make for yourself, but I would be open to, if you don't full loose streak those first 3 rounds, and you have a strong unit you can put in, I would be very open to leveling to level 5 at 2-5. Okay, so I've harped over and over again about not leveling up if you need to lose streak, and how important it is to identify whether you want to lose or win streak and to play your early game around that. Now let's move into the rest of the game, which is honestly a lot simpler in principle, but it's difficult to execute properly. Once you create your stage 2 economic foundation, streaking is still helpful, but it's not as important as maintaining health and your board strength, and also developing direction for your team's future. When you're playing around 4 costs, a typical level curve might be level 6 on 3-2, level 7 on 3-5 or 4-1, and level 8 at 4-5 or 5-1, depending on how robust your economy is at each point, how much gold you were able to generate through your stage 2 econ strength, as well as how much you need to roll at each point to have a stable board, and what level you want to roll on to hit the carries that you want to hit. We can talk more in a future video about how to know when you should be rolling at those pivotal points where you're level 6 or level 7, but you want to make it to level 8. It's all a complicated calculation, but mostly it depends on what pairs you have and how strong they make your board. When playing a reroll comp, you generally want to maintain this econ as well as possible until you slow roll at your desired level. Slow roll being generally maintain your econ above 50, unless there's something really important that you need to hit and you have a high likelihood of hitting, in which case maybe you could go down to 40 or 30. Anyway, back to the leveling curve. At certain points, it may help to slam a level up ahead of the general 4 cost, 5 cost leveling curve. When evaluating whether to level up, The criteria are somewhat similar to evaluating whether to level in Stage 2. The questions you want to ask yourself are things like, how much does the unit you can add benefit your team? Does it empower your strongest units? What econ thresholds can you make while still leveling up? How much econ do you need to have to upgrade the units on your board? These are all questions that are really important to consider, and honestly, that you don't really have enough time to think in detail about during the game. So these are all things that you want to practice and build into your general framework of how you're leveling up, when you're leveling up, and how you're preserving your eco. Why are these things so important to consider? Ultimately, it's because if you level up too early, you can really damage your economy and damage the potential that you had before to hit your units, but now you might not be able to. I used to run distance track in high school, and I think about pacing my economy similarly to how I used to think about pacing in a race. Leveling up is like sprinting. You're pressing that F key, imagine your feet are just boom, 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 just like the F key, okay? If you break into a sprint too early, your economy can run out of steam. Level up too late, and your opponents are going to finish the race before you finish sprinting because they started sprinting at an appropriate interval. If you sprint early, but you still need to 2-star all the units on your board, you're not going to have enough gold to hit your units. Essentially, you'll run out of steam. Sometimes it can be correct to level up even if you're going to go down to 10 gold or 20 gold, but there are reasons why. The biggest reason this can be correct is if you've already 2-starred your front line and your back line, and you're only missing some supporting units that you'll need to level up. So let's say you're playing Ergot Mundo, and you rolled a little bit on 7, you got super lucky, and you somehow hit a Dr. Mundo 2 and an Ergot 2, and your board is already good. But you don't have, you're missing Lysandra 2, you're missing Zac 2, and you're missing, say, one other unit, but everything else on your board is upgraded. In that case, it can be correct to slam your level up all the way to 8 if you can add a good supporting unit, like maybe you can add a Janna, or if you can add a Jinx, and you're not running Twin Shot right now. These are all really good reasons to level up and sacrifice a lot of eco. But if you only have Ergot 1 and Mundo 1, then slamming that level up at 4-5 to go down to 10 gold is probably going to ruin your game, because you still need to hit Ergot and Mundo to really cap out your comp. So maybe in that case, you want to stay level 7, maybe you'll lose a little bit more HP, but then you level up at 5-1 and roll then. But the other important thing to consider is, if you don't have much HP left, like say that you're down to 10 HP, then you might want to just slam that level, because that extra HP you might lose could cost you the entire game. It's all situational, and it depends on these calculations that we've discussed throughout this video. That's a little bit harder to master. I think the Stage 2 econ is what everybody can focus on, because it's a little bit more simple and a little bit less situation focused. It is still, of course, situation focused, but the situations are more consistent. You're going to run into them every game. Whereas the level up situations they vary significantly, because they depend on what's happened in your Stage 2 and your Stage 3 and your early Stage 4, as well as what items you drop, etc. They depend on a lot, but Stage 2, not that much is going to vary game to game, and you're going to hit more and more of these similar Stage 2s where you can identify whether you want to win streak, lose streak. Anyway, those are the two main avenues, Stage 2 and then later in the game. That's sort of how I split the econ principles up in my mind. Remember, all of these econ management principles that I've talked about in this video are guidelines. Use these guidelines to develop your own playstyle, to make it more and more robust and ready to face any situation. And above all, just make sure that you're having a reason for every economic decision you make. The more that you play on autopilot, the more mistakes you're going to make. And if you have a reason in the game and then it doesn't work out, you can consider, okay, what was I thinking at that moment in the game? And how did it affect my game? Did I level up too early and then it ultimately prevented me from hitting my 2-star units later on because I was missing money, I didn't have enough gold? Or did I level too late and I bled out a little bit too much, and then as a result I just lost one fight later in the game and I happened to lose a placement from that? In addition to thinking about each thing in the game, just make sure you're having fun, because at the end of the day, it's a game. Sometimes I have fun by making econ principles for the game. Call me Adam Smith. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you like this video. I'm going to come out with future videos on what I consider to be the principles, the fundamentals of TFT. And if you want to see those, then let me know that you like this kind of content. I also stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/UECKAR, Euchre. And if you want personal coaching, right now I'm offering it for just $5 per game. I like to do VOD reviews, and I really enjoy it a lot. So feel free to drop by the stream if you want to watch some Challenger TFT gameplay, and also feel free to sign up for a coaching session. I really enjoy it, and I think you can get a lot out of it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.